Hi, and welcome to the Ladies in Biz podcast, where every week we have guests that are amazing female entrepreneurs. Find out how they got started and grew their business. Discover how their story can help you grow your business. Thanks for tuning in today. Here is your host, Penny Redmond.
Hey, welcome everyone. Great morning here in Toronto. It is freezing cold. We've had quite the winter, but luckily we are in the comfort of our own homes today. My guest today is Lisa. Hi, Lisa. How are you?
Great. So nice to be here.
Oh, thank you so much. I know at least we don't have to get our coats on and go outside to do this. Thank goodness.
I know.
Anyway, I'm going to let everybody have a little bit of an understanding who you are. So Lisa Durante is the founder of your company, Lisa Durante, the same name. You're a boutique consultancy that partners with progressive companies to retain and empower female talent so they can thrive at every stage of early parenthood and build gender-balanced, high-performing talent pipelines to leadership. Go for it. That's amazing. I mean, this is really great because a lot of us don't want to think that we don't have to choose parenthood versus having some kind of career or being an entrepreneur. So it just doesn't have to happen anymore.
No, we don't have to make the choice.
So at the very beginning, we do ask you if you can give us a little bit of an understanding of your story and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, it's, I find that especially when you become a mother, it's very much a winding road. So I spent over 15 years in corporate, working in executive communications, internal communications. Loved that and did most of that work in New York. And while I was there, I had my first daughter. And the experience in the US having a child, you're very limited in how much maternity leave you will have. There is no federal paid leave there. So you really have to depend on your company. And my experience there was actually quite positive. I worked for a great company. They provided some time for leave. So I was able to take almost 4 months. But then it was the support in coming back, that they were just so supportive, making sure that I had, the support and the knowledge, and women just kind of rallied around me to make sure that I was able to do and continue my job and continue my career. Fast forward, not even 20 months, I had my second daughter and I had moved back to Toronto. And working for a Canadian company, very different, we have amazing paid benefits here for maternity leave. And because of that, my company wasn't as supportive as it was the first time around. And because of that first experience, I expected my company to come and support me, for the women to rally around me, to say, here, let's help you get back up to speed rather. That didn't really happen. And so I just, through my struggle, I then came up with this idea. But I have to say I didn't act on it immediately. I knew that I was no longer happy where I was. I wasn't getting the support. By the time my daughter was 2 years old, I decided that it wasn't the right place for me and I left. When I left, because I needed to bring in income, I started up an agency called Jack Communications that is focused on providing content, marketing, and support to companies. I've done that now for 5 years, and 2 years ago, that little bug that was in my head with the idea kind of came back to me, because more women were kind of coming to me. Just people in my network were asking questions about how did you do it as a working mother? And so then I just started a blog and I started writing about it and just career advice that I would give to working mothers. First started it on YouTube. Have a bunch of videos there. You can check that out. And then now it's predominantly writing, and it's expanded to, I now offer resources to working mothers as well as courses.
I'm going to back up a bit on this thing because I think it's an interesting conversation about what your experience was in New York versus our experiences in Canada. And I got to tell you, I found the same thing. Now, mind you, mine was many years ago. But I don't think it's really, from talking to people, I don't think it's changed much. I think it's kind of the companies or businesses in Canada, because we do have so much support, that they kind of think that if they give you time, that's good enough.
Yeah.
You know, rather than thinking it's just not that. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that's going around with a new mother, and what you have to do to stop working is a big thing for you, because you know a lot of us love our job and maybe, but we want to have children.
Yeah.
You have to be able to find that common ground for both. And by the way, I do love your blog, and I really say to our listeners, anyone that's number one thinking about having a child, or also it has a child today, should be reading your blogs. I really enjoy it.
Thanks.
And I think it's great information and valuable information there. So speaking of that valuable information, and today most of our listeners will be entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs as well, people that are in business as well. Let's talk about, what do you start to do when you start thinking about having a child? Talk about what the first step is when you decide that you want to start a family.
Really, it's about planning. I can't say that enough, that you need to really plan, especially if you have your own business, because you wear so many hats in the business. You are not just concerned about your job and performing that day to day, but you're also then thinking about the bigger picture, like the operations. How can it continue? So there is preparation. And it's the same for if you are working in a company, thinking about, okay, what's this going to mean to my career? How is this going to change things? And a lot of the questions you will not be able to answer. So you don't know how a child is going to change you. You personally, you also don't know who your child will be or what their needs are going to be. So when I say planning and preparation, it's really about thinking broader. And thinking about the things that you can control. So if you have a business, how are you going to get the work done when you will need time to recover from giving birth and then caring for your newborn? So how does that happen? Maybe it's, how can I start to bring more people into my company to...
Yeah, for the time being, bring more people in. Yeah.
Yeah. And it could even be, how can I maybe even shift what I do? So move from very active income to more passive income.
Absolutely.
So putting all of that thought into it, how can you start to set yourself up and your business up for success while you take a step back? When you're in a business, it's not only thinking about how my job will change, because by law you are, especially if you're in Canada, your job is guaranteed at the same level. It may not be the exact same job that you left, but it is very much, the same level. You are guaranteed a position back at your company. So start thinking about what is it that you can start to prepare for as a working mother. So a big one that we talk about when I do my courses is all the maternal bias that will be coming towards you. So when people start to hear that a woman is pregnant, and even times before she's pregnant. So when you are of pregnant age, childbearing age, they start to see you differently. There have been studies done that women who wear an engagement ring to an interview are less likely to be hired, because they're already thinking, well, she's going to get married and then going to have a kid and then she's going to be out. And so all of that bias, it still is very prevalent. And while we have evolved, a lot of us have evolved and we've kind of moved forward.
Yes.
The problem is that a lot of it is so deep in us that we don't even realize that we're doing it.
I agree. Totally agree. Yeah.
And I find the problem is also that on the receiving end, we too have our own biases on what we think a mother should be or should do. And so we then, if it's the same, we then accept it. We're like, yes, of course, I'm not going to be as serious about my career, when that is so far from the truth for many of us. So the planning could be, how can I start to really cement my brand and build a brand at work that people can trust, that I am committed to my career, I always deliver. So really, really thinking about that, because that's what you can control.
Yeah, that personal brand definitely is very important, and how you project. I think what you think of your pregnancy means a lot, because then you're sort of expressing that to everybody else. So if you're coming across and saying, I'm still a professional.
Yeah.
I mean, I might be pregnant, but I'm still the same professional. I still think the same. I still can provide valuable information to my job.
Exactly.
You know, if you feel that way and project it, then it's going to come across much stronger.
Yeah. And it becomes your narrative. So you have to develop, what is that narrative that I want people to see? Because with pregnancy, when you are having the baby, you visually are changing. Your body is changing, and people are not only going to see you physically differently, but they're going to start to perceive you differently. So what is that narrative? How can you shape that for others so that they remember who you were beforehand and what is in your mind, and not just your physical appearance?
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, I was pregnant so many years ago, so things were so different. And I know when we've talked before, I shared to you about how, and thank goodness, times have definitely changed, where my boss didn't believe I was pregnant. And he came back about a week later and he said, I thought you fellas were all pulling my leg, that you're playing a joke on me. He said, I thought you were a professional. I thought you were, you know, you were going to be a really amazing woman in business. And I looked at him and going, I am, and I will be. It's not going to stop.
Right?
But, you know, that was decades ago. But I think that we still harbor some of those biases today. Maybe, like you said, maybe not outwardly spoken, but maybe a little bit inwardly.
Yes. Yeah. I that very much, I do see it. I hear it from people, from women who come to me and explain their situation. And I'm like, they may not have said those exact words, but all their actions reinforce that idea.
Yeah, for sure. And but it does come back to you depending on how you present yourself. I think your narrative makes a big difference as well.
For sure.
Now, the other thing about planning, we were talking about building your personal brand, which is so important, but also the budgeting part of it is so important.
Yeah. Yeah. Budgeting is, listen, kids are expensive. You know that. You've raised 2 of them. Yeah. I'm in the middle of raising them. And you know, just even care for your child, like that is such a huge investment. And that's never something you want to cheap out on. Like that's the thing, you don't want a coupon for that.
No discounts.
Yeah. You want to make sure you're putting your children in a safe place that you believe is right for them and for you, and that works. So budgeting is huge. So you always want to really consider, how can I start to save up? A lot of people do work with financial planners, you know, just so that you can figure out what is my budget? How much do I need to save? Now, again, in Canada, if you're working for a company or you pay into EI, you will get, you know, income on a weekly basis through the, you know, parental leave policies we have. Now, that is never, especially for women who are more senior in their careers, that's not going to match, because there's a cap. So it's going to be capped. So you have to figure out, how can I live for this long, for however long, because now maternity leave can go up to 18 months on that income. And so start making plans ahead of time, really thinking through, where can I start cutting, you know, and even how can I start saving? So if it's saving for an RSPs or all of those, you know, really working with a financial planner, they'll be able to tell you what it is. When you are working on your own, that is where the passive income, how can I start making more money now so that I have at least a little buffer? Because a lot of us can't close down our businesses when we, right? Like, things have to continue because you want to get back to it. So really taking a look at what are your monthly expenses to keep things running, even at bare minimum. So, and then what is it that you need to bring in order to support that? So if you can build up, you know, a little nest egg beforehand, and then, you know, then at least you have that buffer, because it's just so difficult to not only be dealing with your new identity, caring for a child, and then you're like, oh my gosh, we're really strapped for cash, and this is really difficult.
I'd even suggest that you start way when you're, if you're in a business, is find out what the business is, what they do to help. because there's lots of other companies that top everything up.
Yeah.
And so it might you might be surprised by how supportive they are, but
Mm-hmm.
really planning a family is probably a good thing to investigate as well.
Yeah. And then also looking at what, if who your partner, where do they work? What is how can they take advantage, either bring in more money, put aside more money? How can you kind of look at your partner as well and their finances? Because I think it's in March of this year, we have fathers who are support parents who will be able to take parental leave as well, and they too will be able to get a benefit. And I think a lot of companies are now starting to look at how can we top them up. So really looking at that side of the equation as well, because that all feeds into the same pot.
Yeah, it definitely, you've got to really look at that budget and make sure that you feel comfortable, because that's the last thing you want to do is be worried about your income. You've got so much else going on when you have your first child or second child, and you really want to take that time to really savor those moments, because as you know, any mother will know that time goes by so quickly. It's just like a snap. And it's gone. Yeah. So you really got to have the opportunity to savor those moments and really cherish them. Yeah. And speaking of that, as well as childcare is something that you have to budget for not only when you're off, but when you're on and back to work. Is what are you going to do? And so, can you talk about some of the options that we're looking at now?
Yeah, well, there are so many options. It really is, you can customize your care to whatever it is that you need that will work best for you. You can do full-time care, part-time care. You can go into a facility like a daycare center. You can have in-home care with a nanny or babysitter. There's just so many options. There's even au pairs and, all of it. It's just incredible. And then I hear a lot of young mothers, because it's so expensive, that they're doing nanny shares. So, if you're on a street or in a building with other new mothers, that you kind of go into one place and you share a nanny. And so there's just so many options. So what it really is finding what is best for you and what do you need. Really looking at your schedule. So if you work at home, it may not be the best place to have an in-home nanny, because then, they're going to be right there. And it's likely that you're going to want to get involved, even though you have someone else there.
For sure.
Right? So daycare might be your better option. But for example, if you travel a lot, then maybe having someone at home would be the right option for you. So it's really looking at your life, your lifestyle. I think from a cost basis, there are some differences, but I have to say that it's looking pretty standard. Like your care is a set amount. Yeah. There's going to be a little bit of wiggle room. If you nanny share, then of course that's where you can find some cost cutting. But so it's really looking at what is best for you, and then also looking at what is best for your child. If your child has any kind of special need, well, daycare might not be the best situation for them, or maybe it actually is. They may be, yes. Yeah, maybe they need the social support and a stronger social network. So it really is looking at yourself, your lifestyle, your partner, and what they may need. If my husband travels quite a bit, and we were in daycare for a long time, and once his travel schedule kind of amped up, I was like, I need another body. Like, I just need someone else to help. And so that's when we turned to a nanny. We kind of brought someone in, and so she becomes our partner, our second person in the house when he's gone, which is great. So it's really looking at those needs and not really thinking about what anybody else is doing or what the studies say, because having a child in daycare or having a child, being taken care of by an individual, they're all going to be fine. So don't look at the studies. Just think about what you need and what your child needs and what is best to make your life work.
I totally agree on that, because what worked for me it doesn't necessarily mean it would work for someone else. And really, we should never judge whatever decisions are made.
Oh gosh, yes.
And one of the great things is some people are so fortunate to have their parents be able to take care of their children. How wonderful would that be? providing you think your parents are the right parents to do that too, right?
Yeah, having that an internal support is great. I'm finding that more and more that because mothers are working, that they're not available all the time. So a lot of young professionals are like, well, my mother works, and so she's not there, like she can't do this. And then there are other options. So if that is available to you, or a family friend, or some kind of relative, that obviously is great. But also with that, there's always a give and take. With any caregiving situation you pick, you have to weigh your options. What are the costs? Because there are financial costs, but then there are other personal costs that may come.
I found as well for our children that when we started out, or when they were first born, what our needs were different then as they went through and as they aged and got older, then our needs were different and their needs were very different as well. So it was kind of a transition. And I think every mom will just know when it's the right thing for their child or if it's not working. And I'm not going to say I was perfect, because one daughter would tell you that I made a mistake at one point, but I mean, we rectified it. It's like, so you just try, and one thing doesn't work, then be ready and be flexible that you're going to have to make a change.
Yeah, that's a great point, because it does evolve. Like I shared with my experience, my daughters, when they were younger, were in daycare. And then when they got to school, they were in this after school care program. But then once our personal situation started changing with my husband's travel schedule, we switched to in-home nanny to come and help after school. So everything is an evolution when it comes to parenthood. And so you just kind of have to ride the wave. When we had to make the transition, I did it way too late. So there was a big chunk of my time, probably over a year, where it was high stress because I just wasn't managing things. And and then you have that, oh, there's another option. I can do something different. And usually for me, it was a friend who had said, why are you killing yourself? Just do something different. And so sometimes you have to realize that it's time for a change and then make the change.
The other thing is too, I think if you're working mom as well and you are struggling, don't hesitate to go and talk to your boss about it. And I mean, that's what your company does. You work with businesses to be able to prepare them and have a better understanding with what women's mothers, new mothers, or mothers that have other children, more children, what their needs are. And so it's just, don't be afraid to go and say, hey, I really need some help, or I need, for this month, I've got a problem because my husband is going away for this month for his business. And we just work out something.
Yeah.
And I think you'd be surprised by how people will bend a little bit on that if they at all can.
Yeah, and more companies, they're really coming up on flexible work arrangements. With technology, more people are able to work at home if their child is sick, or so there are a little bit more options, but that really does depend on the company and the company's culture, as well as your manager and how prepared they are and flexible they are in their thinking. And so you also have to, while more companies are more flexible, you also have to gauge for yourself, what is it that I can ask for and how can I ask for this? Just not to put yourself in any kind of sticky situation, but really understanding your company's policies on flexible work, working from home, things like that also should be factored in, could be a factor for you as you're planning on, childcare, but also just being a working mother.
Yeah, for sure. And what the other thing is, where I find when you have two people working or two parents, you're both very busy. And so that was my next thing, is a lead in on trying to find balancing of your time. Like, how do you balance your time with working and with having children as well? It's not easy.
It's not. I have a love-hate relationship with the idea of balance, like a work-life balance. Because with that idea comes this, it has to be equal. You have to spend equal amount of time at work and at home, and that's balance. That's not reality. Because
it's not reality.
It's just, so I really encourage people to think about, how can I integrate my two lives together? Because yeah, you have to, how can I bring work and life together? And sometimes that means doing work at home. Sometimes it means, shifting your schedule a little bit. And sometimes it is, I'm going to be at home, but I'm going to be checking my emails and answering, even though I should be with my child. So I think we all need to stop thinking about it, that it's two sides of a scale, where the only way you get balance is when it's even, because you will never be even. And just from a practical standpoint, like, kids have to sleep for 12 hours in a day, and then the time that they are up is when you are working most times. So there's no way to spend 8 hours with your child and 8 hours at work. So it's, how can you integrate, figure out things that work, but then it's also, how can I make the most of my time? Really working, one of the things I say over and over to the women I work with is, learn how to work smarter, not harder.
Oh, absolutely.
Find ways that you can, either by delegating. So how can you do less work but make bigger impact? So sharing, delegating your tasks out to coworkers, or to, if you're on a team, to someone who's more junior, really finding those ways that you can work smarter. And multitasking is not a smart way to work. It actually slows everything down.
We used to think it was brilliant, but it isn't brilliant.
No, single tasking, I think, is where you're going to be able to make the most impact and use your time most wisely. And then the same is true when you get home. Dedicate a specific time for your children. When I first had, and this was with my first daughter, in New York, I was able to talk to them and said, okay, I am going to shift my schedule a little bit. I used to work till about 6 or so. And I would leave the office at 4 in the afternoon, so that I could pick up my daughter by 5, and then she would go to bed at about 7:30. So I had those 2 hours all for her. I was not checking emails. I was not doing anything. It was all about her for those 2 hours. The moment she got into bed and she was quiet and she was asleep, I then logged back on, and then would catch up on everything that I missed in those 2 hours that I was gone. It did take some time for everyone to get used to that, but I was very consistent. I held up my end of the bargain, and then it became a trust that they knew that I would come back online and I would address their question. By the morning, they would get an answer.
I think for balance, for me, when I look for it and how I decide if it's the right balance, is everyone happy? Are your children happy? Are you happy?
That's great. Yeah.
Is your partner happy? So if they're all happy, then it must be the right balance. And it's going to be different for everybody. Everyone's level of is going to be, depending on how much you like working, or how much time you want to spend with your children. But I do I agree with you. One of the things that I really did, and I was able to do it back then, was when I did come home, I was able to be fully one-on-one with the children, and I didn't think about work. Back then, though, we did have cell phones. I know I'm really dating myself. We did have cell phones, but the expectations from the people in business was that you weren't always on them. And of course, that expectation is totally different now.
Yeah.
But I think you just have to be very clear with people that, just like you said, is that there is this window of time where don't expect an answer, because I am going to be taking care of my children. And I think that's fair to ask, and to say that's what you're going to do. And then after, just like you said, I'll respond.
Yeah.
But I think that's what balance is to me, is it's just the level of happiness is, and I mean, not euphoric happiness, because we're human beings, it doesn't happen. But if you're basically all happy with it, then it's the right balance.
Yeah. And my daughters are now 9 and 7, and they give me feedback when they're not happy. And they will tell me that I'm on my phone too much, or that, you're stuck in your office for too long. And so there's also a lot of, because now they're older, I'm also able to kind of set expectations with them. So when I know that there's going to be a busy time, I will say, listen, I'm starting a project. Mommy's likely not going to be able to be there all the time. And then it kind of just sets it in their brain. There are times where they are unhappy. But I've also said it, and then we have some discussions on why mommy works, or, what this does for our family and how it helps, just so that everybody's kind of on the same page.
I think especially when they get older, that communication, it becomes so much more important that they are able to communicate to you on when they're not happy with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important, that they're giving you feedback on a regular basis.
Yeah.
Then
Yeah, and if it's not,
heard, right?
yeah, and if they don't share it in very succinctly in words, I do see it in their behavior, and so there's two methods of communication with them.
One of the things that I found out, we didn't have a lot of technical tools when I was raising our kids, but I wish we did. It would have made our lives so much easier. But I know there's some things that, and I mean, I'm talking about a partner, but it doesn't mean that it has to be a husband or
Mm-hmm.
whoever your partner is, or someone
Yeah.
that is living in your home that's helping you raise your children. But there are tools today, I know, that make our lives a lot easier. And I know you probably have a ton more that I don't even use, because I don't have children at home anymore. But I have a husband that we still have to make sure that we communicate
Mm-hmm.
and that we keep everything organized. So can you share with me on what you feel is, how do you find that working at home, and how do you sort that all out?
Yeah, apps are amazing. There are so many family organizing apps out there, but then there are also just traditional ones like your calendar. We use Gmail in our house, so my husband has his account, as well as we have work email calendars, and then we've also created a family calendar, because our girls have quite active social calendars, so we need to make sure that we know where they need to be, what time, and all of that information. So anytime a birthday invitation comes in for one of their friends,
I remember.
it is put on the family calendar, the daughter's name, and then whose birthday party, if there's anything specific, like where they need to go if it's not their house, so what is the address, but also if there's any gift ideas that they...
Stress. I just feel the stress already just talking about that.
Yeah, so it's like, so everything is in that one calendar notice, so we have everything, and our calendar also has all of my husband's traveling, all of his meetings, so anything that is outside of business hours. So if anything early in the morning or late at night, then it's also shared with myself, and I do the same. And we share a lot of it. So the family calendar is also shared with our nanny, so that she can be on top of it, because there are quite a few birthday parties that happen right after school.
In the spring, I don't know about you, but honestly, in the spring, it was just like, oh, take a number.
Yeah, it's just, so there's a lot of birthdays. Birthdays are a huge one. And then there's just all their activities. So it's putting that in, and then even our own activities. So calendar is a huge one. We also use, we just recently started using Alexa, which is the Amazon in-home virtual assistant. And so she keeps our grocery list. So we just yell out Alexa, and then, add onions to the list. And so we're all kind of, and so that even our nanny is able, as she's working with the kids, she's giving them snacks, she's able to yell out, we need more granola bars. And so it just all comes onto a list.
That is amazing.
Yeah.
My app that's called Our Groceries sounds so archaic all the time.
But there are others share, I've heard people say that everyone has iPhones, then they kind of create a document. I think it's in Notes that everyone shares, and so everyone can keep a tally of it. So even if they're out somewhere, they can keep a tally of what is going on, and then you kind of have access to it.
I'm trying to think. It starts with T. T-E-L-L. There's great ones where you can do share work, and in fact, it was just last night I was talking about it, about Baker's Tells, and T-E-L-L-O-S, I think. But anyway, if you Google it, it'll come up. But it's wonderful too, just like you said, where you're sharing all the information so everyone can see what's happening all at the same time.
Yeah.
It's current.
Yeah. And in addition to apps, like everyone has their favorite apps now. It's also the process that goes into it. So, having the family calendar is great, but if you're not using it consistently and checking it consistently, that's not going to be helpful. Like if we're not all talking to Alexa about the grocery list, well, then it's going to be incomplete, and we're going to have to run to the store a couple times. So it really comes down to process. One of the big ones that we do in our house that kind of keeps us organized is we have a weekly meeting. it sounds very business heavy.
No, it's brilliant.
But on a Sunday night, once the kids go to bed, usually we're just hanging out. We usually will have dinner late on a Sunday just to kind of connect because it's been a crazy weekend, so just to unwind. And so with wine in hand, our phones are always at the ready. So we just grab our phone, look at the calendar, and we'll say, okay, these are the things that are coming up. These are the days, I'm not going to be here these days, or I will say, oh, I have something. And then it's just, okay, who's gonna plan for it? Like, who's gonna be there for the kids? And there have been many. For example, this weekend I'm hanging out with some friends on Friday night. I want to see her new baby, so I'm trying to get there early. We need someone to release our nanny. And so my husband's like, okay, I'll make sure that I leave work early to make it there. So that was all discussed on Sunday, and we have a plan for the week. And so there's not. There's not this, where is he? Why isn't he answering? Sometimes that does happen where you get trapped. But on a regular basis, we kind of know what our week is going to look like and how we can plan for it.
But we definitely did that too. It was different. We didn't have apps, but I can tell you that we always knew what the week was going to bring, where the kids had to be. And I think it goes back to, the tools are wonderful that you can use, but you're so right. It comes back to communication and making sure that you're both on the same wavelength. And then it just, the week happens, and there will be some hiccups that will happen where, you're supposed to be with the children and you're stuck in a meeting. And you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do? So, you're texting, any chance, you can do this? But anyway, but you don't like doing that because it is disruptive. So it's better to have a good solid plan.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I also think what we do, and I know that you do something like this with our calendars, is that when my husband has something that's coming up, or an event, or if we have friends that are inviting us out, or we have an event that we're going to have to go out to at night, we put it, instead of sending an email to each other, we put it on Outlook as a meeting.
Yes.
And so then it's not like we don't have to go, oh yeah, we got to remember to go and put that on our calendar because she told me about it. It's easy as just saying, say that.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes it's so much easier, and then you don't get messed up. And we do every once in a while, but generally we're pretty good about it.
Yeah. Honestly, we put everything. If it's not on the calendar, it does not happen. It just, for me, it does not happen. It's not there. I don't know where I need to be. So everything has to go on.
And I think the one thing that you touched on too is that your nanny has access to it. So it's really good if if you don't have a nanny, then you have parents that might be always wondering. I know that, you want to know when are you needed, or when, also as a parent or a grandparent, you want to probably say, is there a place where I can release some stress off of them?
Mm-hmm.
You can see that they're just going at like a bullet train all week. Is there something that I can take the kids for an hour from you? And you can see that there's a window of time that maybe you can run over and say, hey guys, go out and have coffee together by yourselves or something. Because I find that even having an hour break sometimes, particularly when they're younger, doesn't seem like much to other people, but it can make a world of difference to a new parent.
Oh, yes. I used to love going grocery shopping alone because it was just my hour of just myself and some products. Yeah.
It's very unfortunate they don't have critter books in the stores anymore. They used to have these little critter books, and they were probably about $5 back then. And all the grocery stores had them, and there was a whole big series of them. And there was Bearstein Bears as well. There was a whole series, and then there were little small ones. They were wonderful because the first thing we would do is we would get one. So when they were sitting in the cart, they had their book, to read their book, and they knew if they were good, they got to keep the book.
Yeah.
I was never short on bribery,
No, it's a good tool.
So unfortunately, I think we should all petition that Loblaws and Sobeys and Metro, they all get these Bearstein books in again.
Yeah. I think a lot of family, I see a lot of iPads that kids are carrying just to preoccupy them, just so there's some sanity.
Yeah, I see them right inside the cart, like, not where you're with your little legs. Even when they're older, they're right inside the cart and looking at their little games and stuff. But anyway, so that's a story. So definitely, any other tools you can think of that you use? So you use Alexis for groceries. use calendars, family calendars?
Well, one of the things that I do just from a professional standpoint, so I need to kind of always read the headlines. So I need to kind of know what's going on, not only because of my other agency that I work on. So it's a marketing agency. And so I always need to know the headlines. So I subscribe to email, it's like the Skim, and then there's also the Bullet, the Canadian version.
Oh, I love the Bullet.
And so it condenses the news for you. It kind of gives you the background so you can understand a situation that is happening either in your country or in the world, and you can digest it. So it's just a quick skim, because it's in my email. If I go on the train, then I'm just quickly reading it, and I'm able to.
6:36 for the Bullet for me. I don't know when you get yours, but it's 6:36 a.m.
Yeah, it's first thing in the morning. So it's like I can just do a quick skim. Okay, I understand what's happening in the world. I also have a few Google alerts just on topics that I know. So if I have a company that I'm working with, then they are in my Google alert. And so if anything has any kind of press release or news on them comes out, I at least have that in my pocket first thing in the morning. And I can just, okay, I'm prepared for my day. So I also have that. And then there's just time saving things. Like I love to read. I love business books, but I don't have time to read them. So Audible is a huge one for me. I'm constantly with my earbuds in, even around the house, listening to something or a podcast, something that I can learn if I need to learn a new thing.
Yay for podcasts.
Yes. Yeah. Just so that you can get the insights you need or the new knowledge that you need. And it's just kind of in your ear while I may be preparing dinner or what have you. So that multitasking, when you don't need your full power of your brain.
Yeah, when you're just doing dinner, it's not, well, unless it's a fancy recipe, but normally during the week, it's not a fancy recipe, that's for sure. That was actually, I don't even have this in my notes, and I know, but I'm just going to go over it real quick. So how do you manage meals? Just throwing it out there and catching you off guard, asking you that.
Oh, I'm a little bit of a Nazi when it comes to meal planning.
That's okay, it works.
Yeah. So really regimented. So every Saturday morning, I come up with the meal plan for the next week, and then so that I can go out grocery shopping later in the day, and then I try to prep. Because I really try to eat a lot of vegetables. So I try to prep as much of them as possible for the recipes that I'm going to do. And all of my recipes are things that I do regularly. There's nothing fancy, but I try to make sure that we have, the kids at least see some green and some color on their plate. So I try to prep on Sunday, and then it's just that way when I come downstairs or come in the door, it's just go time, and within 30 minutes I can have at least a meal. I do a lot of soup prepping. Like on the weekend, I do huge vats of soup. I love the slow cooker for soup, so that I can then just portion our dinners out so that we have dinners for the next couple of weeks. So I love meal prep. I use a menu. It's just
we do too. I did too, and actually all through all the time the kids were home, and still today, and even both my daughters do the same thing. Is that they definitely, well, one more so than the other, but we definitely know what we're going to have that week for dinner. So I think that it's kind of like a Saturday morning thing for us. And when the kids were young, we went to St. Lawrence Market.
Nice.
And literally at that Saturday morning when we were there, I would plan our meals for the whole week, and we would buy everything for the week at the market.
Yeah.
And then we'd go home, and and I never had to think about it again. Like it didn't clutter my brain. I could focus on work. I could focus on the kids, and I knew that they were eating, balanced meals and nutritional meals.
Yeah.
And I kept it really simple. It was just, protein, a vegetable, and a starch. More vegetables, contrary to my husband's happiness. But anyway, he did learn to love broccoli in the end. Yeah.
So I think that, I became very regimented with the meal planning once I had kids, because it was just another thing that was on my mind. And I felt like it was constantly distracting me from where from the work that I needed to do. So I was constantly at work. I was like, okay, well, what am I going to make? Because popcorn and wine it's not acceptable for children, like, and it's not good for my body either. So I realized that I needed to really streamline what I'm thinking about in the day. So kind of getting rid of, as much as I can, all the decision making, try to eliminate it as much as I can so that I'm able to just focus on the few decisions that I have to make in a day. And so meal planning has been a big one. So by Sunday, I know what I'm doing. It's all there, and it's just execution once I come down into the kitchen. Yeah.
So on the end, what we always do at the end of the show, and this is really my favorite part, is I always ask a guest to give us their message that they would like to hear women hear and that you'd like to share.
Okay. I think that it's really that it's okay to just go along the journey, set goals, set milestones, and go towards them, but also leave some flexibility to just let life carry you to where you need to go. I find, especially as a working mother, I can't predict what the next phase in each of my children's lives are going to be. I don't know if they're going to have a really hard time, for this, or they might get sick. There's just so much unpredictability, and I can't control that. And so I do have goals. I have, milestones that I would love to achieve. I try not to put too many dates around them because things just don't happen, and then it just leaves me disappointed, I've learned. And then I just kind of also let opportunities come to me. So it kind of keeps me a little bit more open. Just looking at, my business here, working with working moms, it started off as a blog. That's what it started off as. And then mom groups started saying, well, can you come and speak? Sure. Of course I can. I'll share that. And then, from there, someone, I was at one meeting leading a workshop, and I was like, this would be great for my company. I'm like, you really think so? Okay. I'd love to talk to someone. And so I just allowed that to just be my guide, just opportunity to come. Yeah. And to open doors for me. And then I get to walk through.
I totally agree with you. Mm-hmm. Well, this has been great because I think one of the things that we've done today is we've gone to go over, if you're planning to be a mom, and we've gone over some things on that, maybe some helpful tips for them to think about, and because it is a big decision, and and once you made the decision, there's no turning back. Yeah. You've got the child, you can't give it up. Yeah. Figure it all out. And I think really there's no right way or wrong way. It's whatever is best for you. It's really what I believe in.
For sure.
So people that want to contact you and connect with you and have some more conversation about this, whether you're in business, entrepreneurs as well, because you start hiring people, you've got to remember what we were discussing as well, and all that, what new mothers need and support. And so where can people connect with you?
Come to my website, lisadurante.com. And you can get access to my Instagram, to Facebook, where I share a lot of discussions. There's a lot of tips that are shared through there. On my website, you can also access resources. So if you are planning to have a child, there's budget worksheets, for example. If you're working in-house, there's also a worksheet on how you can announce your pregnancy at work. I also, that's a big one. And then I also offer workshops. You can actually access them online. Right now, there's the one is planning for your maternity leave or your parental leave. You can access that, and hopefully shortly I will bring my return to work program online as well. But currently, that's just being available through different groups and live work sessions.
Oh, that's terrific. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking about this subject, because I'm sure that a lot of people, it's a big decision, and it's good to hear other opinions, and so you can decide to have a family and do it the best way you can. Never, always do it your way. Never think about other people. But I loved being here. Thank you so much, Penny. You're welcome. I'll tell the listeners, go to your website. It really is a great website. It has lots of resources on it. So thanks so much. Take care. Have a great day.
Okay.
Thanks for listening to the Ladies in Biz. Send us your comments on ladiesinbiz.com. We would like to hear from you.